Hello there! So this is Modo, and I just want to give you a quick tour of its interface and a few of the basic conventions of things that you'll run into all the time while working with Modo. And I'm going to go on the assumption that you're either coming from another piece of software or you're a complete newbie, and just get you used to sort of how the interface does its thing, I guess, right? So let's just get started. So the interface is broken up into a bunch of sections. There's quite a lot of buttons, but don't worry, we'll get through this. And starting on the left-hand side, we have our tools. So this area contains all of our tools. And when we have a tool active, it also shows you the options and the properties for your selected tool. On the right-hand side here, we have sort of an information-centric area. So at the top here, it shows you your scene. So basically your outliner, if you're familiar with Blender, which has your objects inside your scene. So we have an empty mesh, a camera, and a light. Selecting one of those will bring up the properties for that object. And this is broken up into tabs as well for different types of properties based on the object you've got selected. Across the top here, we have sort of selection, I guess, based tools. So your types of things like vertices, edges, polygons, your sort of type selection side geometry. Action centers and fall-offs and mesh constraints are quite Modo-centric, we'll come back to those. But you've got things like symmetry and snapping to grids, that kind of stuff, and also the options to fire off renders, etc. up here. The bar above this is your layout switcher. So this thing here is your layouts, so similar to something like Blender or Cinema 4D, you have different layouts for work-specific tool setups. And a thing that's really powerful inside Modo is it's extremely modular. The interface is very, very editable, so you can create new layouts, but also the degree to which you can edit these layouts is massive. You can change them up in a whole bunch of different ways, and we'll probably cover that at a later date, but it's very, very editable. Long story short, for this entire video, we're going to focus on this first tab here, which just says Modo, which is basically your master layout. This has access to every tool and every kind of viewport inside Modo. You can get to any part of the application from a single tab. It's very, very cool and very modular. With this bar here, we don't have to see this all the time. So if we come up to here, we can choose to auto hide it. Also, where it says star only, there's more hidden layouts, and you can choose to have which ones are your favorites by clicking the star, and then if you have star only, those are the ones that will show. It's pretty cool. But again, we're sticking with Modo for now. So specific to this Modo interface, we have this view here and these guys here, which are kind of like your view modifiers, right? They change what you can see inside your scene. So where I said before, this is where your tools are. This has all the tools inside Modo in one place. So there's two sets of tabs here. There's one here and one here. So they're broken up into, we're on modeling tools right now. Hover over them, you can see a description. But UV tools are here. Things like topology tools are here. Painting and sculpting tools are here. And two more interesting ones are at the end here, we have what's called the workbench, which is kind of like a custom set of tools you want to kind of revisit all the time. And the furthest right one is the context tools, which tries to pick the most relevant set of tools for the moment based on what you're doing, okay? But for now, we are going to go back to modeling. So this will give you access to basically all of your sort of geometry creation tools for modeling stuff, okay? Broken up to tabs down here, they're sort of broken into topics, and yeah, this isn't the only way to access them. You can access these from many different places in the interface. The thing about Modo is there's normally 4 different ways to get to any single set of tools, and you can choose the way that you want to access them, okay? But this is the default sort of way, I guess. So we've got creation tools in this top tab, things for selections, deformation, so twisting, you know, modifying geometry. Duplicating is kind of like, you know, creating arrays, creating clones of stuff. Editing is for editing geometry in ways like creating slices, so your pen slice, loop slices, things like that live down here. And then we've got some tabs based specifically on selection, so vertex tools, edge tools, polygon based tools, curves. And this one here is again another Modo like sort of special source thing called Fusion, aka Mesh Fusion, which is it's basically a Boolean workflow for cutting things out of other shapes, but it creates nice quality subdivision surface geometry, okay? And if that means nothing to you, don't worry, we'll get to it. So that's the basics. Now, if we look at these across here, we have a different set of tabs for modifying this main viewport. So this is our main viewport. Right now we're using Maya style navigation controls because I don't actually use the default Modo ones. So if you're familiar with Maya, it's the same controls. Alt left click does your spinny guy, alt right does zoomy, alt middle does pan, and there's a little option down here that pops up when you first start off which says trackball rotation is off. I generally leave this off, but trackball rotation is what it says on the tin. If you've got something in the center of your scene, it treats it as if it's on a big swiveling gimbal ball and you roll around it with the center of the scene. It's not something I use all the time, but some people like that kind of thing. You can turn it on and off, and it's the default Modo way of doing things. If you're going to navigate the scene with the viewport, these little buttons at the top right allow you to just drag on these things, and you can just, you know, go around your scene. And bottom left has like a little ball to show you your orientation. And a couple of options up here are this guy here. If you want to have a quad view, just give this a little click and it will split out into a quad view. And if you split your little zoomy inny guy on that, it will sort of focus into that view. You can also modify which view you're looking through over here on the top left. So right now in perspective, we can go to top, bottom, left, etc. Look through a camera. You can also look through a light, which is a thing. And also we have our viewport styles, which I'll show you more in a second, as well as these buttons I'll go into in a second. So the viewport in Modo is also extremely modular. It's a common thread across the application. There's a lot of different ways to do stuff, and there's a lot of different views on stuff. And let's change another one now. So right now we've got this sort of grey background. I personally don't rock with this background, so I'm going to go into View, Viewport color scheme, and change this to Modo blue because I'm old, I'm used to this. And also I like to have a gradient background on here, so we go into our view options, which are either up here or the keyboard shortcut O brings up your viewport properties, and this is extremely editable. So just for now I'm going to go into my GL background. I'm going to change this to gradient, which means I have a gradient background. This is just what I'm used to seeing. Have a click through here, and there's a whole bunch of options, right? So we have different options for visibility, so you can show your lights, cameras, etc. We have things like a HUD, which I'm not going to go into right now. There's your advanced options. There's an advanced viewport inside Modo, which think of like, if you're familiar with Blender, it's kind of like an Eevee viewport. So better quality lighting, a pseudo representation of your end render is quite good. As well as this thing here, which is very handy, of active versus inactive meshes. So if you have more than one mesh object, you can treat the ones you've got selected independently from the ones you haven't, and sort of set a series of rules for each one of those independently. It's quite cool. So let's quickly look at these guys. So where we're in the sort of master Modo viewport, we can bring in other parts of the interface that we need while we need them, okay? So we've got 3 sets of these, and there's duplicates in some of these, right? So right now we have this geometry looking guy, which shows we're in the default geometry creation viewport for modeling. We click on this, we get like a UV view. This, we get a special topology view, or if we click this, we can sort of see our through our render camera anytime. Or with these ones on the left and right, they do the same thing apart from they pop over. So if we click this, we get a duplicate of our modeling view, and these can have independent viewport presets as well. So I can have these viewports look very different. So say I want to have this looking, you know, like I want to see with a different overlay, like I want to see curvature or reflections or whatever, I can have that. Or I can have my UV viewport. I can do things like have a preview render open, so I have a real-time viewport render of what I'm doing on my right hand side, and I can just open and close these. The same on the other side as well. So I click this and I get things like this is grouping for rendering. I can get a list of my images inside my scene. This is my asset browser, so like a preset browser. This is for procedural modeling, and this is a duplicate of preferences. So we can also hide any of these tabs just clicking inside these guys here. We can collapse down the interface if we want. We can also do this with the top guy. Pretty cool. Let's just bring these back in. Boop. Boop. And yeah, so we have all of these viewports, so we can quickly bring in and hide and show different views as we need them. The same thing works in the bottom as well. So if we click on time, we get a little miniature timeline for viewing animations, that kind of stuff. Or I think the stuff, yeah, here we go. This is for pulling out individual floating palettes, so I can have a floating properties here, whatever I want really, you know. an item list just as a floating window if I want it. Or this guy here will bring up a floating like a lower viewport. So things like this thing here, which is the schematic, which is basically Modo's default node graph. And this little button here shows and hides our last selection inside this list. So if we've got, for example, our preset browser, so we can pull in geometry, saved images, all that kind of stuff, materials from here, this will hide and show it. And it's also worth noting that Modo has pie menus. There's pie menus everywhere, and there's actually a viewport switching pie menu, or a view overlay switching pie menu on Alt Space, so you can quickly bring up the things you have selected, and it chooses the last thing you had selected in that viewport and hides and shows them. So once you get used to it, it's extremely quick just to sort of say, oh, I want to see this intermittently while I'm doing what I'm doing, and then quickly hide and show it as and when you need it.